These are notes for Unit 4, Rates, Ratios, and Proportions. A ratio is a comparison between two quantities. Most often we use fractions. We can also use colons or the word to. They all mean the same thing. These three things are equivalent. If two ratios are proportional, that means you can set them equal to each other. For example, 1 over 2 is equal to 2 over 4. Notice they're just doubled. If you cross multiply, what that means is you multiply the diagonals. 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 1 is 6, and if the ratios are proportional, you get the same result. We can also use this to solve missing values in ratios. So we can say things like 4 times 2 is 8, 1 times x is x is equal to 8. So that process of cross-multiplying, 3m is equal to 45, we can only use when we have two ratios equal to each other, and if we divide, we get m is equal to 15. There's a variety of shortcut methods. You can notice, for example, that 3 times 3 gives you 9. So what about 5 times 3? 15. But sometimes the cross-multiply method is really necessary, especially when you see things like this, where you have y minus 3. You should put parentheses there. That way when you cross-multiply, you get 2 times y minus 3, and you set that equal to 6 times 7. So once you distribute, you end up with 2y minus 6 is equal to 42. Now we're back to a two-step equation. 2y is 48, and y is 24. Other parts of ratios are things called rates. These are things like 10 miles per 5 minutes. We have two quantities with different units. And if you wanted to find the unit rate, you would take one of these rates and you would modify the fraction so that the bottom number is 1. So here maybe I'll divide the top and the bottom by 5. And you'll find that I am traveling at 2 miles per 1 minute. And it's the unit rate because it has a quantity of 1 on the bottom. Here's another ratio, games won to games lost. And we can represent 3:2 as a fraction, 3 over 2. And if the team won 18 games, I should put that on top because that's where the W's go. And on the bottom, we'll put an X, and we can calculate if we cross multiply. 36 is equal to 3X, or in other words, 12 is equal to X. That's how many games they lost. If a cook flipped a pancake 416 times in 120 seconds, and they want the unit rate, I'm going to put flips per second. We just want to modify this so that the bottom number is 1. So we can divide the top and the bottom by 120. And our new value is 3.46 repeating over 1. And that's how many flips per second. Here we have a laser printer, 12 pages per minute. And if you want to convert to day, you could try to figure out how many minutes are in a day, but I think it's easier to take this one step at a time. For example, if we multiply by 60 minutes per 1 hour, as long as you are careful in your dimensional analysis to cross out the correct units, and there are 24 hours in one day, And again, we can cross out units and we're left with pages per day. So 12 times 60 times 24. Or in other words, 17,280. So let's take a look at how the ratios and rate problems looked on the quiz. We had things like red to blue marbles. Red over blue is 1:3, so 1 over 3. And it'll say there are 24 blue marbles, so we put 24 on the bottom, and we're going to put x on top. Cross multiply solve, you get that x is equal to 8. Here we have a ratio of soccer players to baseball players, and that is 3 per 5, and they tell us there are 15 soccer players on top, so there are x baseball players on bottom. 3x is equal to 75, x is equal to 25. If we are given the proportion x is to 6 as 12 is to 18, you can set this up using cross multiplication. 18x is equal to 72. If you divide, you get that x is equal to 4. Another proportion, if you set it up using cross multiplication, you get x squared is equal to 25. You have to take the square root of x squared, and then you have to take the square root of 25. On the left, it becomes x. On the right, the answer is 5. Here's another proportion. You can cross multiply. 3 times x, 9 times 7. You'll get that x is equal to 21. Here's one you had to cross multiply with some parentheses. So you should have gotten 15 times x plus 1 is equal to 10 times 3. Or 15x plus 15. That's where most people went wrong, is they forgot to distribute the 15 to the 1. In other words, 15x is equal to 15, or x is equal to 1. We are given this rate of 120 ears of corn per 1 hour. They want to know per minute. So we just have to multiply by a conversion factor. In 1 hour, there are 60 minutes. We know to put 60 on bottom so that hours cancel out. And 120 divided by 60 is 2 per minute. A printer prints 15 pages per minute. We want to convert to day, so we will go to 60 minutes per 1 hour. We'll multiply by 24 hours per 1 day. Minutes cancel out, hours cancel out, and I have 15 times 60 times 24, or 21,600. There's a variety of ways to write out this dimensional analysis. If you started off with 40 muffins on top, you could multiply this by 2 ounces of chocolate per muffin, and you could multiply this by 1 pound of chocolate per 16 ounces. I used lb for pound. And if you do that, you end up with 80 over 16, or 5 pounds. If we have 8 beats per 10 seconds, well, you could just multiply this by 6, and that'll give you for 60 seconds, which is 1 minute. But if you wanted to do it formally, you can multiply by 60 seconds per 1 minute. And this allows you to cancel out seconds. So we have 8 times 60, which is 480, divided by 10, or 48 beats per minute. Let's jump to percents. A percent is a form of a ratio that compares a number to 100. So if we wanted to take 16 out of 20, we could divide the two and then multiply by 100. And that'll give us our percentage, which is 80%. And what that means is 80 out of 100. If you want to find 30% of 80, you can take 80 and multiply it by 30 over 100. You can also set this up as a proportion. You can say 30 over 100 is equal to what over 80? Both work. This trick of 80 is a clue that tells you 80 is on the bottom of a fraction. Any way you do it, you get 24 for your answer here. Next up, 120%. If you want to do it as a proportion, 120 over 100 is equal to, because it says of 15, 15 goes on the bottom, and you cross multiply and solve. This is going to be 18 after you cross multiply and solve. Of 45 is 35. So 35 over 45, and you just multiply this by 100. And this gives you 77.7 repeating percentage. Next up, 230 is what percentage of 200? Because it says of 200, you're dividing like this. This gives you 1.15. If you multiply that by 100, it moves the decimal place over twice, which is how you calculate percentages, and you're at 115. 38% of what number is 85? So 38 over 100 as a ratio, and then of what means we're putting x on the bottom and 85 on the top. If you cross multiply and solve, you end up with something like 223.7 or so. 20 is 0.4% of what number? Notice of what? That's going to put x on bottom. Remember to put in 0.4 as 0.4 over 100. And this is going to be x is equal to 5,000. So what did this look like on the quiz? Well, you can look at 38%, which is 38 over 100. Of 50 puts 50 on bottom. And this is going to be 19. Another trick is that you can always switch these. You can say, what is 50% of 38? And I can do in my head, what's half of 38? That works for any percentage. If you want to know what is 100% of something, it just is itself. You don't change it. 20% of what is 12? So we'll say 12 over x is equal to 20 over 100. The 20% translates as 20 over 100, and of what means x goes on bottom. And x here is going to be 60. 200 over 100, that's from this part. Of 22.5 tells me that 22.5 goes on the bottom, and I cross multiply, and I get 45. The confusing part with this one is marked down 20%. So what we're looking at is 80% of the original price. And the original price is 25. So you cannot really use 20 here unless you want to find the discount and then subtract. If you want to do it in one step, we're going to take 100 minus 20. Once you cross multiply and solve, you get an answer of 20. 3% commission is like 3 over 100, and we're going to set that up as 720 over the total price, which here is going to be 24,000. If it's 40% off its original price, that means it's 60% of its original price, and the sales price is 18, so that's on top, and the original price goes on bottom. So 100 times 18, get an answer, divide by 60, and x is equal to 30. If a customer paid $53 for a jacket after a 6% sales tax was added, a lot of people wanted to do 94% or 6%, and you can't really do that. Instead, we have to set it up as 106 over 100. And we set that equal to 53 as the new price. What is the old price? So 100 times 53 divided by 106. And this gives us 50. Another way of thinking about this is to find sales tax, we take 50 times 1.06. To reverse that process, we can take 53 divided by 1.06. Both will give us 50.